Welcome back. You're listening to the Arvo Flow Sports Hour here on Flow FM. And joining me now is Eddie Dads from scplaybook.com.au. He's our North American sports expert, and he's now officially left the country again, back over in North America in Vancouver. Eddie, I take it that you've been more energetic in previous calls that we've made to one another. How are you holding up at the moment?
Surviving on coffees and fast food at the moment, Ellis. Feeling pretty tired overall. It's been a big couple of days sort of travelling back over here, but luckily got to watch a bit of football on the way through. Obviously got the Australian Open final the other night too, so from a sporting standpoint, absolutely nothing to complain about. And I have to say, I'm thrilled to be back in a time zone where you can watch the NBA every evening at 7 p.m. It's pretty amazing. Having your dinner and watching some NBA, Ellis. So yeah, nothing to complain about over here, that's for sure.
Yeah, I bet. But I've got to say, I don't know how you've managed it all in the last few days because there's been so much sport on to enjoy. So let's discuss it. Firstly, I just want to get your recollections and your thoughts on the Australian Open men's and women's final. Obviously, Novak Djokovic. I've got to say, he really was a machine throughout the entire time he was here. And I really buy into the storyline as well, Eddie, that Australia created the monster that is Novak Djokovic. Now just a furious run through to that final and obviously getting it done in 3 sets. But gee whiz, that jacket, the 22 jacket, it's like, oh, Novak, so much to celebrate. And then he pulls that jacket on and it's like, oh, Novak, what are you doing to us?
Did you see, Alice, he tried to claim that he didn't know that jacket was happening. He seems to imply someone in his team did that without him knowing, which there is just no belief whatsoever from me about that. But yeah, with Novak himself, I mean, that was one of the more dominant singles displays in a tournament you'll ever see. Now, it wasn't the strongest field. Obviously, Carlos Alcaraz and Nick Kyrgios were two of the big names that weren't playing. But yeah, did Novak ever step up to the plate over the last couple of weeks? He was absolutely dominant. I was very pleased to be able to see him live during the first week of the tournament. And yeah, he's on a different level, especially when the likes of Alcaraz and Kyrgios aren't playing. I think they're the two guys in the world that would probably match up best against Novak and would actually have a chance of beating him. And no one had any chance of beating him in this tournament. He was dominant. Like you sort of mentioned, I think it's pretty obvious at this point that he plays better when he's got a chip on his shoulder. We know that he likes to fan the flames of controversy here and there, and have little injury niggles and whatever here and there that he brings up. And I think it is one of those. He needs that me against the world mentality, and when he does have it, like we saw the last couple of weeks, gee, does he thrive? I thought it was really telling, Alice, how emotional he got at the end of that Australian Open final. He sort of broke down in tears with his team and crying. And for all his flaws, I think we do really have to get to the point where we appreciate that we are seeing, I mean, on paper anyway, the greatest tennis player of all time, and one of the most dominant players of all time as well. So very impressive from him. On the women's side of the draw, Arena Zabalenka got the job done against Rybakina in the final. So that was good from her to see. That was actually a really entertaining final in the end. I know there was some sort of discussion on Twitter that it lacked the panache, the flair of some other Australian Open finals that we've seen on the women's side. But I thought it was actually a really even matchup between two of the biggest hitting players on the women's tour. So I found that really entertaining. And can I give a shout out, Ellis, to Rinky Hichikata and Jason Kubler, who won the men's doubles. So that's two sets of Australian champions in the men's doubles in 2 straight years. The odds of these two winning the tournament I would shudder to think what they would have been. 1 in 10,000, 1 in 1,000. I don't know. They were no chance whatsoever going into this. 2 Australian lads got the job done and did it without as much fanfare and controversy as Kyrgios Kokonakis last year, which I'm sure some people are quite happy about.
All in one breath there, Eddie Dads. Very impressive summation. I'll tell you what else the women's final lacked: a Russian flag for Sabalenka, and that is thanks to Channel 9 and Google. But she got the flag that counts. Let's move along and talk about a man who knows all about getting flags. That's Giannis Antetokounmpo, the great Greek basketballer. Now, he scored 50 points in his most recent performance, Eddie. This just goes to highlight that he well and truly is a generational talent. Am I right in saying that?
You are right in saying that, Ellis, but it's a really interesting situation this year. I was looking before, and amongst the favourites for the NBA Most Valuable Player Award, Giannis Antetokounmpo is actually 5th in the favouritism for Most Valuable Player, behind Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, and Joel Embiid. So I think there's a sort of similar argument to Novak Djokovic going on here, where I think Giannis is starting to realise that he's not being appreciated as much as he perhaps should be. among the NBA community. I think I think NBA fans tend to have relatively short attention spans. So they've seen Giannis doing this for the last 5-6 years, and I think everyone's starting to sort of take his greatness for granted. But he's absolutely killing it at the moment. The NBA is in a fantastic spot, leaving alone the issues around player management and rest management and load management and whatever, which I'm sure we can talk about on another phone call at some point. But if you leave that aside, just in terms of parity, everyone in the NBA can beat everyone at this point in time, it seems. The Celtics and the 76ers are out in front of the Eastern Conference, and the Nuggets and the Grizzlies are absolutely destroying the Western Conference. And great to see the Sacramento Kings up in third spot. I think they've got the longest playoff drought in American sports at the moment. I think they've made the playoffs for the last 20 years, so it'd be great to see them in the postseason, Ellis.
Now, we'll stay on the continent talking NFL. The big headline that's going to interest the majority of our listeners is that one that relates to the Aussie player Aaron Sipos, former St Kilda player. He's now playing he wants to play in the Super Bowl at least. So what more do you know about this, Eddie?
We are officially at the pointy end as we speak. So over the weekend, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, they both won their respective championship games. So they will be meeting in the Super Bowl in almost exactly 2 weeks to today, which is very, very exciting, Alice. I absolutely can't wait. I think these are the two best teams in the league for the course of this season. So it's great to see them get a chance to go at each other. In terms of Aaron Sipos, you mentioned, he's missed the final 4 games of the regular season, the Philadelphia Eagles punter. He's striving to become either the 3rd or 4th Australian to appear in a Super Bowl. We've obviously had a couple of other punters over the journey. I think Severio Rocker and Ben Graham were the other two. But Aaron Sipos and Jordan Mailata are going to they're playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. So they'll become the 3rd and 4th Australians ever to appear in the Super Bowl, which is fantastic. And let me say that Jordan Mailata at the Eagles is not getting anywhere near the attention he deserves in Australia at the moment. He's one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, which is a position that an Australian has never played, has no business playing. Would have absolutely no idea how to play. And this guy, former rugby league player, is destroying the position, absolutely killing it. And he's a big reason why the Eagles are in the Super Bowl, which is just an incredible story. So I'm hoping that he gets some well-deserved press over the next couple of weeks, and also hoping that Aaron Sipos manages to get over this ankle injury and join the biggest day probably the biggest day in world sport, wouldn't you say, Alice?
Well, that's always going to be an open debate, I think, Eddie. As far as TV ratings go, I'm not sure it is much of a debate in regards to some other codes that might rival it, but we'll leave that there for now. Let's return back to Australia now. We spoke about the NRL last week, and we've spoken many times before about the fact that as far as on-field action goes, scplaybook.com.au is the place to go for all your NRL coverage as far as fantasy team goes. But Eddie, let's focus on this brewing off-field story and this saga that doesn't seem to be getting towards any resolution as far as things stand right now. What more do you know about this?
Yeah, it's reaching. I know we spoke about this last week, Alice, and I'm still very confident that we'll get things done before the season, but it is starting to move to sort of slightly testy areas, I think it's fair to say, between the NRL and the NRL Players Association. So the NRL took it upon itself to announce the salary cap increases for the next 5 years. This is despite the players having not actually signed off on their collective bargaining agreement yet. So understandably, the players are a little put off by that. The NRLPA is seeking a new medical support fund, the NRLW's first ever collective bargaining agreement, and some other increased wages and minimum salaries for other players. So it's a hefty list of demands for the NRL to get done. As I keep saying, I'm very confident they will find a compromise at some point, but it is starting to get a little testy. And Andrew Abdo is coming out all guns blazing at the Rugby League Players Association at the moment.
Now, we're going to talk some women's football, and we've obviously got the Women's World Cup being held jointly by Australia and New Zealand coming up this year, which everyone's looking forward to. Eddie, it's going to be a red letter day for the women's game in Australia. But this the excitement just continues to ramp up because we've got reports in now that Australia's opening game is going to be moved away from the 45,000-seater stadium, Allianz Stadium in Sydney, to the Accor Stadium, which holds far more of a capacity. This is for Australia's opener against Ireland. The good news continues to come off the back of the fact that we saw some very steady ticket sales early on for the Women's World Cup. It's going to be just something that we've never really experienced before, Eddie. So how excited are you, and how big could this be for the growth of women's football in Australia?
There's just the limit does not exist, Alice. This is just an insane event for Australia to be hosting at this point in time. Like you said, they're expecting to be able to pack out Allianz Stadium in Sydney, which is, that's enormous. Like that doesn't happen for some of the biggest men's games in the country. So the fact that we're about to practice, about to be able to fill it out for a women's World Cup game is just incredible. They're projecting that there's going to be there's two games on opening day, one between New Zealand and Norway at Eden Park, and the second one at Stadium Australia, as we mentioned, in Sydney. And the World Cup organisers are projecting well over 100,000 people attending those two matches combined, which, for sort of non-footballing nations like Australia and New Zealand, that is just remarkable. I know you and I are both very excited about some of the matches coming up at Hindmarsh Stadium in Adelaide. We've got a bit China versus England is probably the biggest one that we've got locked in so far, as well as a round of 16 game. And frankly, at this stage, Alice, I wouldn't be surprised if Hindmarsh Stadium isn't big enough for these games. But do you think there's a possibility that they might have to call in Adelaide Oval, particularly for that round of 16 game?
Look, I think they might just get away with it, Eddie, because there's no Australia playing, and we know that Australia really are the draw card, particularly with some of the impressive players they've got. I know you're a big fan of Sam Kerr. I think they'll get away with it, but it does remain to be seen. I mean, at this rate, you may well be onto something, so we'll keep tabs on that. Eddie Datz from scplaybook.com.au, so grateful for your time. I hope you can find a way to get settled back into life in North America as quickly as possible. Great to be back on the airwaves with you. We'll speak to you again next week. All the best.
Thanks, Alice. Love talking to you.